朋友们，今天看到了一段弗里德曼接受访问的视频，非常的有意思。弗里德曼是美国《纽约时报》专栏作家托马斯·弗里德曼，同时也是《世界是平的》这一本书的作者。他和那个著名的经济学家弗里德曼不是同一个人。这个弗里德曼呢，他在视频中阐述了他对关税战的看法，以及对于中国产业发展的认知。其实呢，就在本月初，他来到了中国，进行了一次详细的考察之旅。之后回到美国，他以刚刚看到了未来，但他不是在美国为题目发表了文章。他在这篇文章里的观点很完整的，在这一次的视频里也进行了阐述。这个弗里德曼呢，他对于中国产业发展的看法非常的精准。他提出美国现在应该怎么做，如何跟中国进行合作，具体的方案其实是很有参考价值的。中国人看了一定会会心一笑，因为我们太熟悉这一套了。这就是当年中国制造发展的翻版，引进外资，成立合资公司，获得对方的技术，发展自己的产业链。只不过呢，今天主角由中国变成了美国，所谓的外资呢，也由美国变成了中国，角色颠倒过来了。他在文章里称川普关注的是美国跨性别运动员可以参加哪些比赛，而中国则专注于利用人工智能来改造其工厂。川普的解放日战略是加倍的征收关税，而中国的解放日战略则是开设更多的研究园区，加倍推动人工智能驱动的创新。他随即提议美国国会两党的议员应该走出去看看世界。这些议员频繁攻击中国，但是很少人提前做过功课，只会说一些民主、安全等等的陈词滥调，最后呢以山呼美国、美国、美国作为结束。那么谈到中国成功的原因弗里德曼引入了中国欧盟商会前会长伍德克提出的一个概念，叫做中国健身俱乐部。这个概念在专访视频里完整的进行了阐述。这个概念其实非常精准地描述了中国产业竞争之所以像今天这么强大的原因。他说呢，如果我们不在关税的壁垒后面建立类似的健身俱乐部，那么我们得到的只会是通货膨胀和经济停滞。你不能依靠关税来实现繁荣，特别是在人工智能的黎明时期。简而言之中国的健身俱乐部模式很棒，但北京仍然需要和川普达成一项贸易协议，以保护其出口引擎。美国也一样需要跟中国合作，但是他呢补充说道，川普的行为不可预测，政策每时每刻都在改变，以至于中国非常怀疑他们能否跟美国达成一项川普不会违反的协议。弗里德曼称呢，在他看来中美唯一的双赢协议就是在美国制造战略基础上进行合作，也就是美国来出工人，中国来出技术、资本和专家的模式。他坦言该模式就是中国制造战略的翻版。20世纪90年代，中国工人和来自于美国、欧洲、日韩等国的技术、资本和专家合作，促进了中国经济飞速发展。弗里德曼呼吁美国政府欢迎中国企业赴美投资，把中国的技术带入美国。他声称呢，我们应该采取的做法是一边对华征收关税，一边欢迎中国公司进入美国市场，要求他们把最好的制造创新授权给美国公司，或者跟美国公司合作，成立股权平分的先进制造业合资工厂。同时他还提出上述的合作模式可能面临的挑战，那就是中美间信任缺失。他批评美国的政客和议员不断地推动反华的议程，打压在美经营的中企，自言此类做法非常愚蠢。他也指责美国社会存在的中国恐惧症和反全球化。那么说了这么多我们现在来看一看这个有趣的美国老头，他的美国制造梦究竟是怎么回事的。
The notion that they can't innovate, what gives the lie to that, as if you talk to American businesses who operate in China or European businesses who operate in China, what they'll tell you is that we first came here for the market, and now we come here to be close to the innovation. That we cannot basically be in touch with the cutting edge of our field, particularly in autos, unless you're here. So China realized it could not compete with combustion vehicles with America. And so it took the decision to leapfrog them right to EVs and ultimately autonomous driving cars. It did so by basically having its smartphone companies become car companies. So when I came to China after COVID, I said, wow, when I was last here, Xiaomi was a phone company. I came back, they were a car company. When I was here last, Huawei was a phone company. I came back, they were a car company. And so basically they put their cell phones on wheels. And the reason this is important is that when you get into a Didi's their Uber, it is a seamless digital experience from the rest of your life. It syncs up with your cell phone. I rode in a Huawei car when I was just there, and I was riding with someone from Huawei. He took out his laptop, pulled down a screen that came out of the ceiling, and his laptop immediately synced with that screen, and he was working in the car. He says, "What would you like to see? You want to see anything?" I said, "Yeah. Get me Paul Simon's concert in London's Hyde Park. I'd like to watch that on the way to your campus." It was up in, I'd say, about 30 seconds. The sound, Ezra, you know how you buy cars now every 2 years and they always say, it's got Dolby, surround, yada, yada. I have never in my life heard sound like this in a moving vehicle. It is just so far ahead of anything, I've seen here. Volkswagen, for instance, I met with their China head when I was there. They've got a whole facility there. They call it, in China for China, that unless you're competing with the best, what my friend Jörg Wittke, the head of the European Union Chamber of Commerce, calls the China Fitness Club, unless you're in the gym with them, you're going to get run over.
So this conversation we're having emerges out of a conversation we had a little bit randomly on the phone. You had just come from China and I just come back from book tour. And we were talking about something else, but then I asked you how your China trip was. And what you said to me basically was, Ezra, you have no idea how screwed we are.
Yeah. Because what you see, Ezra, when you're there is the product of 30 years of being in the fitness gym. And it's a particularly Chinese fitness gym. And it kind of works like this. New industry comes along. Let's call it solar panels. Every major city in China decides they need a solar panel factory. And the local government subsidizes it, maybe domestically born, maybe partnership with a foreign one, maybe a foreign one. And you end up in a very short period of time, I'm making the number up, but with 75 solar panel companies. They then compete like crazy against each other in the fitness gym, and 5 of them survive. Those 5 are so fit that they can then go global at a price and level of innovation that is very hard for a foreign competitor to deal with, which is why China today basically controls the global solar panel market. But what you also don't see is that process of winnowing down from 100 of those solar panel companies to 5 produced a massive explosion of supply chains domestically to feed that industry. The same thing went on with cars. The same thing goes on with robots. And so where you end up 5 years later is with interlocking set of supply chains.
But after tanking global markets for a week, then beginning to see the U.S. bond markets unravel, the Trump administration backed off, paused, did a 90-day pause on tariffs on countries that have not retaliated, which is just a generally strange concept.
Yeah.
But double down on Chinese tariffs, right? I think it's up to 125%, something in that range. China is retaliating against us. The Trump administration's broad view, articulated by J.D. Vance and others, is that at the center of their entire trade strategy has been that we need to build all this in America again, not amidst all of our friends, right? The Biden administration had a friend-shoring strategy, but Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, he talked about his vision, and that the way to do this is very high tariffs, incredibly high on China specifically, but also, frankly, on the rest of the world, because what you're trying to do is bring it all back here. And that is a way of making us capable of competing with China. There's a series of papers out there that make this argument that China has a kind of hegemonic level of dominance over global manufacturing. They're not the only manufacturers, but they have primacy there. And we have it on the financial architecture of the world. And what, in this theory, what Trump and his team are trying to do is take manufacturing back from China. Do you think their theory makes sense?
Hire clowns, expect a circus. Okay. If that is your theory, okay. Then go ahead, put all the tariffs 1,000% on China. That's day one. But these guys are entirely first order thinkers. Day two has to be a strategy for what you do the morning after here. How do you then build the industrial base that you want to take advantage of the time you're buying with your tariffs? So what are these guys doing? Trump put up a wall, okay, against China, and then they went out and shot the American car companies. Ford was just downgraded today. I saw its stock, I think, is down to $7.50. Why is that? Because Ford did everything that Biden asked it to do, that a rational company would ask it to do, that we would want it to do. And then what does Donald Trump do? He comes in with his right-wing woke bullshit and says, we don't do EVs here. EVs are for girly men. We only do manly industries. Well, fuck that, okay? Because look what happens now to Ford. So you say we want to bring this here. I don't want to have my kids screwing in parts, okay, into cars. I want them designing, okay, investing in and inventing the next generation of EVs. But let's go back to that ecosystem I talked about, Ezra. EVs, robots, autonomous cars, batteries, clean energy. If you say, oh, we're not to do the EV part, before I came over here, I read Trump wants to reopen coal plants and he loves drill, baby, drill. Okay, so it doesn't make any sense. You're building a wall against China. Great, I'm all for it. But what are you doing behind the wall? So we catch up. You're taking your own companies out and shooting them in the back if they're not right-wing woke. What's the project, what the Trump administration focus on? How many billions can we take away from American universities of their research funds, to punish them for DEI strategies? Now, I'm here not to advocate DEI, but if I had a limited time in the world right now, I sure wouldn't be focused on that. I'd be focused on doubling down on the research capacity of these universities. I'd be doubling down on NIH. What are they doing? They're cutting the budgets of our Crown Gem research facilities. So it's all just bullshit. They're not serious people. They're clowns.
But you are not all for building a wall with China. You're making an argument that even among Democrats, I think is somewhat more subversive right now, which is that if you were a serious person, you would do with China what we did with Japan in the 90s, which is, by the way, when Donald Trump came up with all of his trade theories. This guy's had the same opinions on everything for decades and decades now. What we did with Japan is we brought in their car companies here and we learned from them. What China did with us was that they brought in our manufacturers and they learned from them. And what you are saying is that if you take seriously how good China has gotten at manufacturing, then what you would try to do is begin bringing in its factories here as the condition of access to our market to learn from them.
Exactly. You should do 50-50 joint ventures with Xiaomi. You can build your cars here, 50-50 joint venture, number one. And number two, you have to build your supply chain here as well. So you're not just bring all the parts in, from China. You got to build the supply chain and the factory here, joint owned, exactly what you did to us. But I argued for this before with Huawei. What I said at one point was I'd say to Huawei, here's the deal. We're going to let you wire Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. You can sell your technology in those 3 states. We're going to watch you for 3 years. We're going to see how you handle that. We're going to see how you handle the data. If you do well, we're going to give you 2 other states. We created no incentive for them to be a better actor. There was no ladder up or out at all. We just then tried to kill them. And their response was, you talking to me? You talking to me? And they now went out, got into the fitness gym, and they might kill us. So if all Trump is doing right now, Ezra, today, I don't know, I've lost track what the tariff is on China. We may be getting toward infinity. I have no idea. But if behind that is a strategy to basically do what we did the other way, I'm all for it, but if the strategy is to only build a wall so we can go back to digging coal, and only depending on oil and killing the wind business and killing the EV business, then this is going to end in such a disaster. This is a big game, and they don't think he's a stable actor anymore. There's been a real cost for this back and forth. Hey, I'm glad the stock market, went back up today, but don't think this has been cost-free.
I am livid about this particular thing. So the press secretary, the White House press secretary today said to the media, I guess a bunch of you didn't read The Art of the Deal. When he pulled off or did a 90-day pause. There was no deal. We didn't get anything. We vaporized a huge amount of wealth.
Yes.
We have created a signal that everybody else should trust us less and fortify themselves against these tariffs coming back in 90 days. Trump has become himself far less popular. We've put the financial system under a lot of strain. We have frozen a huge amount of future investment. This idea that you act the madman in order to get these extraordinary concessions, we didn't get any concessions. We got nothing. What we did was we lit a lot of our political capital and geopolitical capital on fire. And we are calling that a victory. But also, Trump has now shown that there is a place he can't go. So his leverage over the rest of the world just diminished, because what the world just learned is that he actually can't destroy his own bond market. So if he tries to do this again, and the world does not want to be pushed around by us, they can wait us out. Now, there's a concentrating issue with China, and we'll see how that plays out. But there was no deal made here.
There was, as you say, worse than no deal. We shot ourselves in both feet. And now we are in a much less powerful position because we've alienated all those allies we need to create leverage on China in the future. And so it's an unmitigated disaster.